Well, thank you very much for inviting me here. You've taken me a while. I don't think I've been up in Sydney for at least 12 years, so I've become a bit of a stick in the mud down in Tasmania. I went through a few problems, but they seem to be overcome by now. Anyway, talking about the society and how it happened, it was a combination of synchronicity and various events. I first went to Bayreuth in '77. In 1966, I went to London, part of my work, and I joined the English Wagner Society in an effort to get tickets to Bayreuth, and for every year never got any tickets. And then I was having dinner with a friend in '76, which was the centenary of the founding of Bayreuth, and I said he worked at Lufthansa, and I'd worked for BOAC as their accountant in Australia for 7 years, and so we all knew each other in the airlines. And I said to him, who in the world you got to know to get to Bayreuth? And he said, why didn't you ever ask me? We get an allocation. And so I said, right, next year I'll go. And Olga, who was the reservations clerk at Lufthansa, a wonderful, lovely lady, unfortunately she passed away not soon afterwards from there. But she organised the tickets, and I went on my own. I sold my violin, I sold books, I sold everything to get the money and everything to go there. And it was the Chirot ring, and it was just bliss. It was just wonderful, a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time. And I teamed up with a group of Americans that were there. They were sort of Wagner groupies, and they go all around the world and they go to every performance, and they never miss anything. But the big problem with those people is that they become cynical in a way, and the whole thing is, oh, did you hear that? She missed that note, or blah, blah, blah. And they virtually destroy the very essence of what the whole ring cycle and all the music dramas are about. So I sort of pulled away from them because I'd come out on cloud 9 and I'd be brought down to the earth very quickly, and I didn't like that. Anyway, that was '77, and then in '79, my partner and I went again through Lufthansa. They got us the tickets. And then in 1980, what happened was Leonard Hansen, back in the mid-'70s, I didn't know he was slightly even interested in Wagner. We never discussed it, but he used to come into the gallery when we were in Liverpool Street in Darlinghurst, and we used to do framing for him. And he was a dentist in Macquarie Street, very, very good dentist. He used to do Margaret Whitlam's teeth, and anybody of note was always there. Anyway, he was going for the first time in 1980, and he said to Olga, is there any other Aussies going? And they said, well, there's a few, but she said, go and see Richard and Murray. They've been a couple of times, and they'll tell you a little bit of place where you can eat, where, things to see, blah, blah, blah. So he turned up and he said, what about founding a society? And Murray piped in and said, thank God somebody's talking about it. He's been talking about it for 10 years, it never stopped. And so I said, well, what you've got to do is when you go there is the Friends of Bayreuth have a lovely building in the grounds near the Festspiel House, and go and see them, ask them how we can be affiliated with the societies all over the world. And also, if you're going to London, go to the English Wagner Society and get a copy of their constitution, and we'll adapt it and change it to suit us. And while he was there, several Aussies that he met up with in Bayreuth, he told them all about what he was going to do, and they convened a meeting, the first ever meeting in Bayreuth. So the first founding meeting was in Bayreuth. And so later on, I think it was October, about 15 or 20 of us came to the print room, and that's when the numbers were given, and they were the founding members. We all signed up. And Reg and Betty Maloney, I knew them through Betty's sister, Jean Walker, because I used to represent her husband's sculpture and drawings. And I knew all about her books on Australian native plants that a pair of them had done together. and the beautiful plates they'd done for the protégé of the Sydney region, beautiful work she used to do. And so it was extraordinary how the synchronicity of people of like minds suddenly found that we all had this common interest in things. And so from then on, and then Len came up with the wonderful idea of putting on a film evening at the AMP Theaterette down in Circular Quay. And he borrowed some wonderful films from the German ambassador in Canberra. And hundreds turned up. We had to turn away a lot of people. They couldn't get in the door. And so we signed up quite a number of people that night. And then from then on, I used to say, we've created a monster. We had a business called the print. We had a business called the Wagner Society and a hobby called the print room, because it was extraordinary. I used to pick up the phone and say, "Centre of the universe," and they'd say, "Is that you, Richard?" And I'd say, "Yes." And they'd say, "We're just wondering," blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah." And they didn't even hear that I just said centre of the universe, because it became that way. But through that, and then with Charles Mackarus, Elizabeth Brigger, again a bit of synchronicity. Elizabeth and her partner, Janie Bredden, had a little interior design business, and we used to do all the framing for them. And she was Charlie Mackarus's sister. She was a Mackarus. And Andrew was Deputy Mayor of Sydney, and they became great friends and used to come for dinner and everything at the house. And so I said to Elizabeth, "Do you think Charlie would be interested in being our patron?" And she said, "I'm sure he would." So she gave me his phone number in London, and I got the 10-hour difference thing in reverse. Rang him at 5 in the morning, and Judy answered the phone, and she said, "Richard, it's 5 in the morning." And I said, "Oh God, I've done it the wrong way." She said, "Don't worry, he's up." So he came to the phone, and I explained it all to him. And he said, "I'd be delighted." And he was a wonderful, wonderful man. We had so many lovely talks that he gave over the years. And then we put on a big book launch. Another bit of synchronicity, Nancy Phelan wrote this biography. And we launched it at the Goethe Institute, and signings and everything. And Nancy was my yoga teacher back in 1964. And she's related to the Mackarus family. And so, you know, it's extraordinary how everything's interconnected. Nothing happens, in a sense, by chance. We have free will, we all carve our own roads in life, and we make new roads, or we follow some other body's roads, but nevertheless, there's an interconnectedness, and it's what being human is being all about. And I'll go back a little bit to when I was about 11, I was at the Saturday matinee, and our radio at home had never heard a piece of classical music coming out of it. It was all popular music. And my sister and I used to have singing competitions, and we'd stand on a butterbox and we had to sing the pop song of the day, word perfect, and then we used to keep score. So we were the Meister singers of that period. Anyway, I was watching this thing, and it was a little clip of Russians at the Bolshoi listening to a symphony concert. And I was amazed at the rapture look on their faces. It was extraordinary. They were transported. And I thought, there's something there that I don't know about. So I went home, and we had a little Nipper, HMV little Nipper radio, and I found that if you went down that end of the dial, which had never been, there was 2FC and 2BL, and there was some classical music on it. And the first thing I got was, "What you listening to there? That's horrible, turn it off." And I persevered, and then the next year, David Oistrakh came to Australia, and he put on a special concert at the Conservatorium for school children, and it was 4 shillings a ticket, and I saved up my 4 shillings, and I went. Well, I was overwhelmed by this violin. I just had never seen or heard anything like it. And I spoke to the music teacher at high school, and I said, "I want to learn the violin." He said, "I'll teach you if you get a violin, if your parents buy one." And I asked them, and they said, "No." So that was it. And when I was 16, I bought one. But in the meantime, I started reading very many esoteric allegorical books about what is going on behind the scenes in humanity and the evolution and past the ancient history. I was always fascinated in that from a very early age. When I was a child, I used to go, every Sunday I'd go to all the churches in the neighbourhood in Lane Cove, and I'd often be asked to leave because I'd laugh so much at what they were doing. They say, little boy, would you like to go? And I was always interested in what they were about and what they were pushing. And when I used to go to the Theosophical Society talks when I was 12, and I'd get on a Sunday night, I'd go up to Lane Cove Terminus and get on the tram, not tell anyone at home, creep out the side gate and up to there, and I'd get the tram into town, and I'd go to Adjar Hall, and they'd have a lecture downstairs, and the Savoy Theatre was upstairs. They owned the building there. And if Krishnamurti, all sorts of people were giving talks. I mean, I heard some amazing people, but didn't realise who they were, bishops and all sorts of people. Anyway, if the lecture wasn't that, good, I'd go upstairs to one of the movies at the Savoy, and I saw these wonderful continental movies. And I saw the wonderful De Rosenkavalier with Shroshkov, just not long after it had come out. And then Reg Maloney told me later on that they'd done this production in Vienna, not the Salzburg, and they finished it like 11 o'clock at night or whatever. They went away and had a meal, and then they all came back at 2 in the morning, and they recorded the whole thing, and it was filmed. So it was just an amazing thing that they, with the stamina, as someone said today, that they did, and of course the unions wouldn't allow it today. You couldn't do that. But anyway, I met so many wonderful people in that period, and one of them, she was Swiss, and she just passed away a couple of years ago. And she said to me one night, she said, "Where's your mother, little boy?" And I said, "What mother?" And she said, "Who are you with?" And I was 12 years old, and she said, "Oh, you're on your own?" And I said, "Yeah." And I used to come to all of them. And with that, I started reading the allegorical aspects of Wagner, what is underlying the myths and everything. And one of the books, I think I've got where have I put it? Disappeared. I had to wear this because I had all the stuff in it. Oh, here it is. I just photocopied the covers of these 3 little books, and I thought I'd just mention them to you because they sort of shaped my early life, and they're still available. I looked up the net, and you can still buy them. And this was the first one. Mysteries of the Great Operas by a fellow called Max Heindel. He was a Rosicrucian in California. And it explains all the Wagnerian operas from an esoteric point of view, and it gives you the underlying aspects of the mythology and what's going on behind them. It gives a sort of insight into not just a fairy tale type of thing. And then the next book, I think, would have been Aspects of Wagner. That's a great little book. I'd recommend that to anybody who's coming to Wagner for the first time. It's a very good, it's only a slim little volume, but it's perfectly readable, and you'll gain so much from it. And then a third book, that in 1981, I was in New York. We'd been to Bayreuth. We went to London, and then we went over to the Ring Cycle in New York. Our friend had got some tickets for us. And I was in the Metropolitan Opera bookshop, and I saw this little book, For Freedom Destined by Franz Winkler. And it's all of the mysteries of man's evolution in the mythology of Wagner's operas and Parsifal. And I thought, oh, I'd love to read that. And it's only about half an inch thick. It's not a huge book. But these were lectures that he'd given for a society in New York called the, what was it called? It doesn't matter. It was a Jungian anthroposophical society. They combined both philosophies, and very esoteric, very interesting. And It was just manna from heaven. I lapped it up. It was just amazing stuff. And I was in the Met in 1990 with a friend who was Professor of Music at Quebec University. We'd met in Bayreuth the year before. And we went to the ring cycle to hear Jesse Norman and Hildegard Behrens, and they both cancelled. So that was a disappointment. But the stand-ins were wonderful anyway, and it was a wonderful production. And actually, Patrick Veitch was there, the same performances, and we had a wonderful conversation with Patrick, because Patrick used to be the general manager of the Australian Opera, and we were great, great friends. And he was, at that stage, he was running the Philadelphia Ballet. And he said, when you're in America again, you've got to come and stay, and blah, blah, blah. And I never did. And I always, when he died, I felt sad that I had never kept up the friendship, because he was a lovely, lovely person. Anyway, I wanted to buy a copy of this book for Mark. And so I said to the girl in the bookshop, I bought this book in 1981, and I told her the title, and I said, I don't suppose you've got it in print anymore. Oh, she said, that book's over there. We're never out of stock of it. We sell more copies of this book than any other book in the bookshop. So it just shows you the thirst that people have for digging underneath the superficial in a way. And I was fortunate in my life. I've heard some amazing singers. But the thing is, when you go to experience an opera, and if you don't get distracted by the neurosis of the director, and that is the biggest problem. It's the projection of the neurosis of the director. And if you have that attitude, you can see what he's suffering from. But the problem is that very serious parts of the drama, where you're really you're being transported, being transformed, you're being initiated in a way on many levels into a different state of being. And then you have trivial, strange things going on the stage, and then everyone starts laughing, and it destroys the very flow of what you've been going through, because it is an experience, and it's a transformative experience. And I am what I am today by having gone through all these things. I went through a near-death experience back in 2013. I was dead for about an hour. I bled internally. And when I was over the other side, I said to the guide that I've met in many dreams, and he looks exactly like one of Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy or one of those people's drawings, wonderful character, very interesting person. And I said to him, oh, well, I said, yeah, all the things I haven't finished, if they're important, someone else will do them. If they're not, doesn't matter anyway. And then I met all these people that I'd known over the years, and some I didn't know so much. And I said, why do people fear death? It was just so amazing. It was just, started off, I could see the whole of the city, everything, and then zoom, I was in another dimension. But I had a dog called Nicky, a boxer. And I said, who's going to look after Nicky? And I was back. She brought me back. She was a darling, darling dog. She died when she was 13. And I'd had boxers for about 20 years, and they'd all overlapped, and they were wonderful, loving dogs. And then 6 months after she died, I got Bailey, the Whippet, who's the world wonder whippet, I call him. He's just an amazing animal. But anyway, getting back to Wagner, those early years, the people on the committee worked so very hard, and we all, the little newsletter, I'd have to sit in the car and proofread it before I gave it over to the printer, and all this stuff, and finding, and Werner Behr, when Tamara mentioned Werner, Werner was a stalwart in the society. He came to all the wonderful celebrations we had. He'd play Happy Birthday as though Wagner had written it, and it was just, he was such an enthusiast. And I missed him a lot. I've got lots and lots of letters, personal letters. We used to correspond quite a lot. And I always remember one of the things he used to say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person, because a busy person will get it done, but the person that's got nothing to do, it'll just get put aside. And I always remember that. But he was a darling, darling man, and a great enthusiast of the works of Wagner. And then, of course, Charlie, and then all the opera people, the great names of the period in Australian opera and overseas. If they were available, they'd come and be the guest speaker at our annual dinners, sing a song, and, you know, and because Werner would always accompany them. So, and then, of course, Rita Hunter. It was quite extraordinary because Rita always had weight problems. And there was the story, I don't know if it's true or not, but her and her husband and the daughter came out of the green room and went down into a taxi and got in and the axle broke. That went around for a long time. But one of the other opera singers told me one day in the green room she arrived with six rolls, you know, salad rolls, and they thought, oh, she's brought us some lunch. No, she proceeded to eat them all. They all heard. Anyway, she moaned about, she was wonderful in many ways, but if we didn't go to her recitals, we got told off. And I've got wonderful letters that she wrote, really telling me off. And I mean, they're classics, they're wonderful. And so I've got all those letters. I've kept them all in large volumes, in letter books I had bound back in the early 80s. And there's 9 volumes, and the 9th volume is nearly full. And I daren't fill it because they say 9, you know, that's it. You write 9 symphonies, that's it, you're off. You know. So I keep moving things around a bit so that the 9 volumes don't fill up. But all those things are being preserved, and I think it was good that I did keep them because they might have been lost in the various upheavals and that have gone on since I departed from the society. And yeah, and Leonard, of course, he lived, slept and breathed the society. He was a great enthusiast. And of course, Michelle, talking of Rita, he designed a gown for her, and we used to call it the pink tent. And anyway, she wore it everywhere. She loved it. It sort of disguised a lot of her stuff. And oh, am I going over time, am I? Oh, I'm sorry, I get talking.
I think we all want something to eat.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I've been told to shut up, so that's good. Legs fall off iron pots when I get going, so that's the thing. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for inviting me here. Just a little bit of what those original days were 40 years ago, which seems like a minute ago, and all the very best for the future, and may it blossom, and all the work you're doing for, you know, encouraging singers and musicians, that's really wonderful. Thank you very much.